girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today is a very special reading vlog because today I'm picking up Stephen King's newest release, which is Holly. I'm very grateful because I'm a constant reader. I love having a new release from one of my favorite authors every single year. I don't know how he does it. I absolutely cannot complain about all of the content though, but I am very excited to be picking up this book all about the titular main character named Holly. I think I don't speak for only myself when I say that, you know, she is like one of Stephen King's like favorite reoccurring characters for both the author and then also for the audience. It even says on the back of this book here, I could never let Holly Gibney go. She was supposed to be a walk-on character in Mr. Mercedes and she just stole the book and stole my heart. Holly is all about her. So I'm really excited to pick this one up because I picked up The Outsider before I read the Mr. Mercedes series, and I really loved The Outsider. I really loved Holly. So I also enjoyed the short story, the If It Bleeds short story collection. So I'm very excited that we have a full-length book about Holly. I'm very much looking forward to this one. So Holly Gibney returns in this thrilling novel to solve the gruesome truth behind multiple disappearances in a Midwestern town. That is all I want to know going into this one. I am so excited to get to read this. I went to Barnes & Noble. This is the day it comes out. So today is Tuesday, September 5th, the day this came out. Went and picked up my copy because, you know, I had to go and see every single copy and make sure I got the one in the best condition. And also so I could go ahead and pick it up on opening day. Ever since I got back into reading, it's been kind of a tradition of mine to go to the bookstore and pick up Stephen King's newest release on release day. So this is going to be a vlog all about Holly, all about Stephen King. Welcome fellow constant readers, and I am just so excited to get to reading this and get to vlogging. So I'm gonna go read Holly and I will talk to you all later with a reading update. So I am on day 2 of reading Holly. I just passed the 100-page mark, and I do want to give a quick disclaimer because I think this is something I have seen a lot of people say a lot of different things about whether or not you have to read anything else by Stephen King before getting into Holly. Normally I would say no, pretty much any Stephen King book would be a good jumping off point. However, this is a recurring character and I just feel like you're gonna be confused if you jump into this because it already assumes that you have a familiarization with Holly's story, her character arc, the other major characters in here. They aren't really introduced, they're just there. So I suppose if you don't really care about any of that, sure, you could jump in and not read anything else by Stephen King. But I would say, so for me in my own Holly Gibney journey, I read The Outsider before realizing that I probably should have read the Mr. Mercedes Mercedes series first. So ideally, the order to read the books before getting to Holly would be she's introduced as a side character in Mr. Mercedes, and then in that trilogy, she becomes a bigger character. And then the next book that you should read is The Outsider, that has Holly in it, and she's more of a main character. And then there's a short story in the If It Bleeds collection that's pretty much like really setting up the action in here in a way. Like, it's very much the events take place very close to each other, and they are mentioned in here a couple of times, especially towards the beginning, in a very offhand way that assumes that you already know what's happening. So if you don't mind any of that, I think you can dive into this one and read it before any of those. Listen, if you don't have any interest in the Mr. Mercedes book series, I read The Outsider first, and it does give like a 2-paragraph long synopsis of pretty much everything that you need to know about the Mr. Mercedes series. So I would maybe start Outsider, If It Bleeds, and then Holly. Or if you're really not interested in The Outsider either, I would recommend you read the short story about Holly in the If It Bleeds collection, just because it really does set up kind of like where Holly is location-wise, career-wise, and just current events-wise rolling into here. So with all of that kind of administration stuff out of the way, I'm enjoying this. I am very much enjoying this. I feel like it's going to be, it is a mystery. People are disappearing from this small town. They're not connected to each other. Their disappearances are not connected. They're not assumed to be necessarily foul play. A lot of them are assumed to be younger people who are runaways, but Holly Gibney is on the case. She takes a case from one of these young women's, her mother is hiring a private detective, and she starts to realize that this young woman is only the latest in a long string of pretty much yearly disappearances from this same town. So she has to figure out what's going on. And what's interesting about this is you see who done it. Like at the very beginning of the story, you know who is doing these things. You just don't know why, what their reasoning is, what's going on. You start to get little hints. I did last night just get a little hint of what these people are maybe doing with the people that they abduct, and it's going in an interesting direction. So we'll just give a little bit of a kind of trigger warning slash maybe spoiler, I don't know, but Stephen King said himself, don't eat while you're reading this. So yeah, I find that very interesting. Honestly, for me, I don't turn to Stephen King for the detective mystery of it all. So there's not exactly like a mystery that you're trying to solve, if that makes sense. Like Holly's trying to solve the mystery. You as the reader already know who's doing it. You're just trying to figure out like why and their motivations. So I really enjoy that. I would much prefer it to not being able to see like what's inside of these people's heads, because Stephen King writes a very terrifying bad person slash bad people in here, and it's very, very interesting. That being said, I am really enjoying it, so I'm going to go back to reading this, and I will talk to y'all later with another update. Okay friends, it is day 3 of reading Holly. I am almost done. I realized that I've just really been speeding through this and not updating as much as I thought I might at the beginning of this vlog, because I've just been eating this up. This is just, I've really been enjoying it. I was a little hesitant at first going into this book because I do not like the Mr. Mercedes series. It's not my favorite King work. I generally tend to enjoy Stephen King's work when he focuses more on the speculative, whether that be fantasy or supernatural horror, than like hard-boiled detective, like those sort of stories. However, I did enjoy The Outsider and I am really enjoying this as well. It's like my kind of mystery, which is not even like a mystery. Like, this is definitely horror, because you as the reader, there's no mystery of who is doing this, of why they are doing this. You figure that out a little bit into the story as well. So you know who the bad guys are, you know what they're doing. You get to just really be inside of their minds and explore, like you get to read as they kidnap their victims. So while Holly is trying to figure out what happened to this latest disappeared victim, this young woman who has disappeared, she doesn't know any of the answers. You as the reader do. So that for me, you know, this is less of like a thriller or a mystery in terms of you're not trying to solve the mysteries with Holly. You already know them, and it's just, it's creepy. I'm really liking it. I also am enjoying the fact that this takes place in Ohio. As someone who grew up in Ohio, very much considers myself an Ohio girl, a Midwestern girl. This story is taking place in a fictional town that is like in the middle of like the Dayton-Cincy area, that kind of area of Ohio, which is where I grew up, Southwest Ohio. So that's been really fun as well. I've really been enjoying just that kind of almost local to me flavor. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I wanted to come on and give an update because I'm on page like 360. This is only about 449 pages. That's where the author's note at least ends. So I'm coming up to everything converging together, and I'm very excited to see how it's gonna go down. I'm like very riveted, and I think that's kind of apparent in the fact that I haven't really updated throughout the majority of this book. Like, I was planning to do an update every 100 pages or so, but I've just really been enthralled. This is a really good book and I'm excited that I'm reading it. I can't imagine that my feelings are going to change too much based on the ending, but you never know. I feel like Stephen King is very infamous for his maybe less than stellar endings at times. I definitely don't think that's a hard and fast rule. I think there are a lot of books of his that end well. So we'll just have to see for this one. So I'm gonna go finish this bad guy up, and then I will come back either today or tomorrow morning to discuss my thoughts about Holly and how I felt about the book. But yeah, going into the end of the book here, very excited. I will talk to you all later. Alright friends, so I have finally finished Holly. I put the dust jacket back on, so it's official. I'm done reading it and I really enjoyed it. I have a lot of thoughts about it, so I'm actually gonna put this like a little bit behind me so I can talk about it without waving this book in Neil's face for a long time. So I really enjoyed this book a lot more than I was thinking that I would enjoy it, just based on my non-enjoyment of the Mr. Mercedes series and just knowing that this might be maybe not paranormal, which it isn't, so keep that in mind if that's a deal breaker for you. I was just very worried it was going to be like a detective story, like his hard crime, like the hard case crime, I think. Those books, I'm not like, I've read some of them, I haven't read them all, but while they're okay, they're not my favorites either, so I was a little nervous going into this one because I do like Holly as a character. I think she's probably one of the best written King characters, female main characters that he's done, and I really enjoyed seeing her growth as a character, which honestly got me like a tiny bit emotional because when I read The Outsider, I was in a very different place mentally than I am now. And it was cool to see, you know, Holly as a starting out character and some of her quirks and some of her mental processes. I know a lot of people have either, I don't think King has said this ever, but I know a lot of people who are autistic or who have like severe anxiety or OCD. I know a lot of people find a lot of things in themselves in Holly. So it was really cool to see Holly as a character, her growth, and seeing also that like from the first time that I've read Mr. Mercedes in particular, I think that was like 2019, my mental health journey and like the way that I've been able to manage my own mental health struggles and live with those and just become a more confident, less anxious person. I thought that was nice to read about. So that's like a very personal anecdote that obviously not everyone is going to have, but I did enjoy that. Holly's still like the same lovable Holly, but she definitely, you know, has had some growth to make her a main character. If you've hated all of Stephen King's newest releases, probably don't pick this up. I really enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed Fairy Tale, and I did not know that that was an unpopular opinion until I started making a video, an unrelated video to this one, and realized that Fairy Tale is not very well liked, and the character, at least, you know, for like the very like loud people on the internet, the character of Holly is not particularly well received as well. So you know, who knows if it is like a majority of people or maybe just like very loud minority, but I guess so maybe I have some unpopular opinions when it comes to I liked Fairy Tale, I liked this one, I like Holly as a main character. If you don't like Stephen King's like new style of writing, like if you prefer older King to newer King and you don't like any of his newer releases, I don't think this is going to have anything to kind of save that for you, as well as if you don't like Holly as a character, she's the main character in this, so just know that going into it. Additionally, what I really liked was that it was like a horror. It was a mystery. Holly's solving a mystery, but you're not solving it along with her, which, you know, based on the kinds of books that I like to read, I don't mind. Just know that going in. We are following a PI, but well, she doesn't know like who did it, why, and all of that. We as the reader do. So if that's bothersome to you, know that going in, as well as this book does take place in, there are some like throwback scenes in different years starting with 2017, but this does take place largely in 2021. So this is a very COVID-centric story. Stephen King is an author who likes writing very contemporary stories, at least for his time, and what I like about it is that I can go back to one of his older releases and read it and be like, oh my gosh, this must be like such an encapsulation of 1979 life or 1985 life, because you know there's brands in there, there's jingles in there, there's all sorts of little details that make the, even if they're like the most speculative tales, so rooted in a specific year, a place, a time, that I really love that about his writing. But know that going in, that this is very COVID-centric, because obviously in 2021, COVID was a big deal, and Holly as a main protagonist, I don't think you could have written a story about her in the time of COVID with without bringing it up, without it being a constant thing. She is a very germ adverse person. We know this even before COVID. We know that she's going to take precautions if she were a real person. So I think that was good. Me personally, I've like actively avoided trying to read stories that take place in COVID, just because I personally don't feel like I'm ready for that. Like I've read some books that have taken place during COVID. I haven't actively looked for any books for that. It's not something that will make me DNF it. Like I have to want to read something else about the story before going into it knowing that it takes place in COVID. So I think this might be rated higher for me upon a reread, because I definitely think it was a lot. Definitely, I think if I go back and read this in like 2040, I'm really gonna be transported back to the time of 2021, which is excellent on Stephen King's part. Like he really captures the vibe and like, you know, the little like elbow shakes that people were doing, and some people masking, some people not, like the various degrees of characters that are like masking and everything like that. So if you don't like very contemporary things, or if you're not ready for a COVID story, I'd also caution you against that, because it's very prevalent. It's not a story about COVID, but it is definitely a story that takes place during 2021, and just knowing Stephen King and his work, like really rooting it in specific years and just like the contemporary things going on at the time, you know, if that's a deal breaker, that's going to be a deal breaker for you in this book. I think it's very, very prevalent. Also, if you're one of those people who has decided that Stephen King has become political all of a sudden, you probably will get very annoyed by this book as well, because it does talk about current events, talks about COVID, talks about BLM. Like it talks about things that are in our cultural zeitgeist, or things that are happening. And I always like pointing out to those people that are claiming that he's suddenly become political. He's always been political, and maybe like the things in his stories don't hit for you as much as modern day political things do, because they're not like contemporary political issues. Like I could go back to like his very first like 5 couple of books, The Dead Zone, The Stand. A lot of his ideas, even if they are explicit, and like he's, you know, even talks about like, you know, people who voted for Reagan, or oh, they obviously must have voted for this person or that person. Like the political aspects have always been in his story, as, you know, political parties, especially right now, when the US is like very, very divided. It's a part of our political and just everyday life. So yeah, I don't think it's a problem. I do understand though that like I share a lot of the same political beliefs as King, but I also think that it's also not a new phenomena. So I think it's interesting that it's something that people are like very upset about now, when it's always been like very present in his works. It's just another thing that he uses to really put a book into perspective. And I know a lot of people really hate that. They hate it when authors use a lot of like things that root the book to real life, which I can totally understand. It definitely like dates a book. I like that datedness of a book. I know not everyone does, so you know, I know that's gonna be divisive, but just know in this one it's got a lot of that in it. So you know, if that's gonna be a deal breaker, I wouldn't stress yourself out and pick it up. Like I'm not saying you can't read it. I definitely don't agree with telling people what they can or cannot read, but you know, if you're like, oh, Stephen King's too political, I hate the modern day commentary he puts in his books, this book's just gonna bother you, so I probably wouldn't try to pick it up. But I enjoyed it. A lot of what I didn't like about Mr. Mercedes, I thought was kind of rectified in this almost a little bit, especially the character of Jerome. That was one of the reasons that I hated Mr. Mercedes. But the way that King writes Jerome and Barbara, who are 2 Black teenagers, Jerome's I think in his 20s at this point in the Stephen King timeline, but they're 2 Black teenagers who I did not love the way that they were written, but I think King has taken some feedback about the way that he wrote especially Jerome and Mr. Mercedes, and their fleshed out characters. I loved seeing them as like secondary main characters in this, so I thought that was cool. I thought that there was a lot of things that I was worried about because of Mr. Mercedes going into this one, that really changed my perspective, I guess. I don't know if it's enough to pick up Finders Keepers or End of Watch. I think those are the other two. I've only read Mr. Mercedes, and boy did I want to DNF it. So yeah, I, you know, bring that up because I think it's totally valid. Like, I want to make sure that like people know I love Stephen King, but like I have rated books of his 1 star before. So it's not like I'm mindlessly giving out 5 stars to every Stephen King book, nor do I think this is like a 5 star. It's not in my top 10 Stephen King books, but it's higher up. Like, it's not in the middle. I don't think it's middle-ish, like very forgettable. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's in my top 10. How crazy is it that he has such a backlog that like I can have 10 books, I can have like 20 more books, and then I can have like my least favorite 10 books. It's crazy. But just, you know, putting that out there that while I am gushing praise over this book, there are books that I haven't enjoyed. So I totally get, you know, if you haven't enjoyed this book. And sometimes my Stephen King videos get like people, I like my engagement on this channel frequently. I've noticed some of my Stephen King videos get people who maybe don't normally watch my videos or are just looking for a fight. So if you hated Holly, totally great. Definitely, you know, have a conversation, have a dialogue down below, but keep it respectful, because, you know, everyone has different opinions. So yeah, I'm honestly kind of bummed because I read this, you know, within a matter of days, and now I just have to wait until the next Stephen King book comes out. So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts. Some of my kind of spoiler-free thoughts, I think. I don't think anything that I've said thematically really spoils anything. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I think I'll enjoy it more upon a reread when COVID is not so fresh in my mind. It was a very enjoyable reading experience, and I think the ending was done well. Let me know down below if you've read this. What do you think of the ending? Because I think in some ways it was kind of anticlimactic. It wasn't as like crazy or wild as a lot of Stephen King endings that I've read. Like, it wasn't the most explosive ending. But I thought it was a good ending. You know, sometimes you have to decide whether you want to really go out there on a limb and either write an ending that people are gonna love or hate, or just write a good ending. I think this was done well, but let me know your thoughts down below. And, you know, additionally, let me know all of your thoughts on Holly down below. Honestly, this makes me, every single time that I read a good Stephen King book, I just crave diving into another one, because there's just something so comforting about his writing style that I absolutely love. I love the mundane details. I love like the descriptions. I think, you know, for a lot of people who are going to be disappointed that this isn't a like mystery story where you're trying to solve it along with Holly, think of this almost as like a Criminal Minds episode, but a Criminal Minds episode where you're spending like a good chunk of the episode finding the serial killer or the bad guy, and then you have like a chunk of the episode that's dedicated to one of the agents' like personal lives as well. That's the kind of balance in this book. So yeah, it really worked for me, and honestly, is now a good time to say that I've liked Fairy Tale, I've liked Holly. I hard DNF'd Billy Summers. It just, there was something that was very triggering to me that I think I could, you know, push through and read it now. So let me know, should I read Billy Summers? Like, should that be the next Stephen King book I pick up? Because I haven't read that one. So see, that's a good case in point, you know. Stephen King has so many books that some of them are gonna be for you, some of them aren't. Let me know if I should try Billy Summers again, if that would be worth my time. So yeah, final thoughts, I enjoyed it. I wouldn't recommend this for a first time Stephen King reader because I feel like you have to know a lot, either The Outsider, Mr. Mercedes, or even the short story. And If It Bleeds, I would have just a little bit more introduction before diving into this one. But if you like King's newer stuff, I think this is a really well written story of his, and I really enjoyed it. So that is going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe to my channel for all the cozy gaming and bookish content. Stay safe, keep it creepy, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!